All right. Um, and I just wanted to, let's see, what did I have on my agenda for today? I thought, I don't know about other people, but I was pretty jazzed about the eclipse. That was part of my convoluted travel schedule, and I'd made a commitment 7 years ago to go to the eclipse, and I followed through on that. And so, did anybody else make a eclipse journey or a special eclipse viewing? No? Okay, well, I'll just brag then, and then you can dislike me more because I was looking at an eclipse and then went to Hawaii. And then I thought we'd just talk about the summer workshop a little bit because I know the travel plan should be all done with that. I wanted to just make sure that if anybody had any questions or concerns about that, we had a chance to talk about that. And then with only two more meetings this spring, I thought we'd just do a general progress check and provide some encouragement about what fellowship progress looks like for each person, which I expect to be quite different. And your fellowship work and kind of implementation might be one mostly in one big project, or it might be in little things that you do with students on a more regular basis, and all of those things are okay. And I've heard from a couple fellows that feel, as I think is not unexpected this time of year, like things have moved along quicker than they expected. They thought they'd have more done. And I'm just here to say what you're doing is great, and I hope people will stick with the fellowship and will continue to build towards some implementation of things in next school year. So we've got plenty of time. And I just wanted to check in on that. So if we have any other things we should be talking about, or anybody else wants to share anything, there should be plenty of time for that. Um, okay, so let's talk about the eclipse, because this isn't just me bragging on things I've done, although these are my pictures and I'm pretty happy about them. So my nephew is a atmospheric scientist, and we met up to see the eclipse in Wyoming in 2017. And that's where we said, wait, there's this other eclipse that's happening really close to his birthday. We'll make a plan to go. And so he's living in New York City right now, so that made the destination for this eclipse trajectory New York State. So this is the picture I'm pretty excited about that I took through my monocular scope with my cell phone. And I figured I had a brief moment to try during totality where I didn't need eye covering, so I could get a picture lined up. So it's not the crispest thing, but it's pretty cool, and you can see the little different colored sun flares. I was pretty happy about that for a quick observation. And so oops, now we got chat messages, make sure. Oh, well, thank you, Laura. That I was talking to some students, actually teacher, future teachers, pre-service teachers, doing a talk, and one of them asked how they could relate the eclipse. They said, my students are really interested and excited about this eclipse. They keep bringing it up in class. I teach ancient world history. How do you think I could make a connection? And so I said, well, these eclipses have been happening for a long time. I'm sure there's some recorded evidence of what happens during the eclipse. And so I'll talk about that in a minute, but on a more recent kind of updated type of data record, I came across this. Does anybody know what this map is showing? Those little orange squares familiar to anybody? This is iNaturalist observations. So some of you might know that I'm a nut about using iNaturalist to observe biodiversity. And so somebody just had the clever idea to snapshot the observations from April 8th, when there wasn't an eclipse and when there was an eclipse. So on the top, you can see that's the eclipse day, and you can see the observations aligned in the path. So I was one of those double nerds that was out there waiting for the eclipse and making observations of the things that were near me, because that's how I was killing the time. I did find a snapping turtle skull, by the way, in shell. That was pretty cool. So this is one example of how I thought was kind of interesting, at how time and space are connected, so that when you get a certain event occurring, it might organize the way people occupy space. A good example of this is a sporting event or a concert or something that brings tens of thousands of people together to a common location who wouldn't otherwise be there. This is kind of a more distributed event. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. And so I was doing a little Google searching to get some material to share with this teacher, other than my general, hey, I'm sure there's lots of examples. And so it turns out there's actually some ancient stone inscriptions that document an eclipse from 300 BC, I believe. I should have pulled out my reference on this before I got on the call to share. I will share this in a follow-up email. That the details in this observation of the eclipse were so precise that scientists went back and said, well, let's do some calculations on this and see when we thought the eclipse would occur. If we were calculating back, like right now, people are familiar, you can go online and see the next 50 years eclipses and the paths. And so people are calculating celestial movements and figuring that out years in advance so that people like me and my nephew can plan rendezvous 7 years in advance. But so they said, well, if we're good at doing this, we should be able to go backwards. And so if we went backwards and we tried to predict this event that happened 2,500 years ago, how close do we get? And what was really fascinating to me is they went back and the amount of error in their prediction caused them to come up with a conclusion that the Earth's rotation is slowing down less than we thought it was. So I don't know how many people are aware of the fact that Earth's rotation is slowing down. It makes sense. We're more or less like a top spinning. And we are gradually slowing down, and people have thought they understood how much slowing was occurring. And it turns out that by having these very precise observation of eclipses thousands of years apart, we were able to recalculate and say that actually the slowing is less than we had thought. And so I thought that was a pretty cool example of geocomputation, how you could just take these precise locations, in this case, where the shadow of the moon will fall across Earth's surface, and then basically do a calibration to determine are our calculations correct. So this led me to, you're fascinated by my stories, I can tell. I'm gonna give you another one, slightly more recent, which is in 1811, there was an eclipse that went across Virginia, and it was the eclipse path was going to cross Monticello, where Thomas Jefferson lived. And so he was very excited because he recognized this as an opportunity to determine the precise longitude of his house, which he wanted to know but couldn't know without some kind of celestial observation with a known time characteristic. So he hired this kind of high-end mathematician to take his observations of the eclipse in Monticello and calculate based on the eclipses in other cities when they were documented along the path, and calculate the exact longitude of Monticello. Now, much like the other example I gave, it turns out that wasn't exactly what he thought. So the mathematician made some minor error, generated an answer that looked very good and impressed Thomas Jefferson, but turns out to be like a quarter of a degree off in longitude. So he was very pleased that he knew the precise longitude, and also he didn't know the precise longitude because calculation was off. So both a story about the power of geocomputation, also about the fact that computation is a precise activity, and you might want to double check your work or ask somebody for help if the computational exercise is beyond your skill set. Okay, anybody else with any interesting tidbits about eclipses that you learned during the I'm collecting now. No. Okay, well, it was a pretty cool event. If you have have has anyone ever seen total eclipse in your memory? No? I'm scrolling through where I can see people and the people are not looking like, yes, that's me. So you guys should make a point of going to Australia because Australia is going to have all kinds of eclipses over the next 3 or 4 years. They're going to have like three, and it's never cloudy in Australia, from what I understand. So this is a very good plan for travel to Australia. Okay, well that's our travel portion. Check the chat. Nope, we should go on a field trip. Okay. Also, another little thing I learned, see, I have more eclipse facts. I was reflecting on being at the eclipse in Wyoming, and I thought, we were in the wide open spaces, and I don't recall the shadow approaching. And so then I looked up how fast the shadow moves. It has a theoretical maximum of 5,000 miles an hour at the poles. Eclipses move fastest at the equator, and the slowest they can move is at about 1,100 miles an hour at the poles. Um, I just said that reversed. It is faster at the poles, it's slower at the equator. 5,000 miles an hour max at the poles, slower at the equator. I should know at least that Earth-Sun relationship part of it. Okay. Okay, back to what we're here for, right? Um, so so just the refresher part of talking about our fellowship path and what each one of you is doing. Now, in addition to having my scrambled schedule, I haven't been able to get to everybody's plans and give feedback, but fear not, I am going to be doing that. And I do really want to see not only what where you think the opportunities exist for your particular grade level, the work that you do with your students already, the subject areas you teach. We've talked a lot about how we can maybe um, find the geocomputational angle in a topic that doesn't necessarily seem geocomputational on the surface. And maybe make more visible the geocomputation or the geographical questions and the use of computational analysis to just make that more visible in cases where students might be doing it more as kind of uh, something they might call just categorization or remembering that things are in different relationship to each other, like if they're studying astronomy, for example, and recognizing that those are based on computational relationships. So, um, so you really are looking for the place that geocomputation offers some leverage in your subject area. I'm not really wanting anybody to go outside or off of their own teaching objectives to meet the objectives of this fellowship. I think there's plenty of room for overlap. So that's the reason I'm asking you to set your SMART objectives and just basically say, what are you going to do to put this set of concepts into practice to integrate geocomputation into your teaching? And then hopefully, as we have sessions like this and we make our own plans more evident and transparent to other people, there's opportunities for collaboration and support and for people to say, hey, I do something like that, or I have an idea for what you're thinking about doing, and maybe it's helpful, and I can offer it as a suggestion. So, so we want to get to that networks of collaboration and support. Having said that, I recognize the limitations of Zoom boxes, and the fact that most of what we have has been one-way communication. When we're hanging out in San Diego in July, we're going to be able to be much more multidimensional and for people to group up and have much more conversation. So please do look forward to that. Is there anybody who has an outstanding question or concern about your individualized plan? Gina has her hand raised. Thank you,
I
Gina.
have a quick question and comment. You know what? I was actually doing something together with Haley Salazar, and I didn't even think to check the email, but I think she wasn't on the Zoom link, so that's why she's not here.
Oh.
And so I'll communicate, but I think ours isn't evolving, so I didn't know if we had to be
You said yours is not evolving?
I'm sorry, locked into something, or if we could, but yeah, but
Yeah, no, it can absolutely be evolving. I should have emphasized that because that's one element of you being able to determine your own smart objectives is to add to them or adjust them over time. I I did expect that this intersection of geographical thinking and geo inquiry and computational thinking and computer science was not something that people were dwelling in a lot. So I thought this would be a kind of a new angle, a new thought process, and I expected you to it to be a succession of seeing new opportunities, new possibilities, and then figuring out how to integrate them. So I welcome evolution. I think it's a good process.
thank you.
Mostly what what I envision as an endpoint for our collective work is for us to be able to individually and collectively give examples of how we integrated and tested geocomputational instructional um, activities with our students being diverse groups of people in different places and different grade levels and different subject contexts, and then saying something about how students reacted to, or hopefully positively, but maybe not. We learn from failed experiments as much as successful experiments. So the idea I'm working with is that there's exciting developments that we can bring into classrooms just by thinking along these geocomputational angles. And so you're my partners in doing that. So I would expect your ideas to keep changing as you think about it. And it's essential for me because I don't work with students like you all do. If any of these ideas are going to actually come to fruition as teaching experiments or learning experiences, you're the ones who are doing that. I'm only helping to fuel the fire and support you in doing it. Okay, any other questions, concerns? You can always email me. Um, okay, but do be confident that there's plenty of meat on the bone in whatever subject area. Oh, Michelle has her hand up. Go ahead, Michelle.
Thanks. My question is more along the lines of I so the map that you shared with the eclipse data was pretty interesting. And I feel like I would like to be able to utilize that sort of technology in my class, but I don't really know where to find those things. And I'm wondering if when we meet in San Diego, if there will be opportunities for learning in that way, only because a lot of the things that you've shared and a lot of the technologies that you've shared are all things that are going to have to be self-taught, and it just takes extra time, and it feels like it takes extra long because I'm trying to learn it as I go. And I don't know if other people are in that same boat, but it would be really helpful, I think, if I don't know if you already have San Diego all laid out, or if there might be an opportunity for when we are visiting for us to be able to learn some of these technologies or how to find them.
Absolutely, and there should be some opportunity for us to spend more time, to actually engage with things and come up with questions. So I think that will be very helpful. And no, I don't have the time all planned out. I'm definitely not that on top of it. I've the the kind of big picture decisions I had to make as far as room reservations and um, thinking about transportation and letting you guys know the outlines of the meeting time. Um, but there's room for building the agenda, and thank you for that suggestion. So because the issue is how to make it easier for you to dip into this line of thinking about computational thinking and geographical information um, with the time you have available in the classroom. And it's not helpful if that requires a lot of research and development on your end. So definitely like that suggestion. And I will tell you that one of the things I envision for my homework in this is compiling a list of resources, some things that you can pull into your classroom. And if you go on our CGA website, let me pull out of this. Oh, stop. And pull up, I'm going to pull up our CGA website. One of the things I've been doing under resources here, I've created the story map collection. Some of them are things that I've shared with you before. Some you probably haven't seen. So I had previously had these things aligned with just on the website with the atlas. And then I realized that if you weren't looking for the fourth grade atlas, if that's not what you were looking for, you might not see these. So these are some examples of things. Like I think at the very beginning of our meeting, I might have showed you this one of the geography of the Black population in the US. I think that's like a good one for an intro to geocomputational thinking. Just recently, I was working, I'll just showcase this because I'm pretty jazzed on this in the last minute. Did do Does anybody know about the ANZA expedition or teach about the ANZA expedition? So it's cool because it's the 250, everybody's getting jazzed about the 250th anniversary of the United States. So it also happens to be the 250th anniversary of the ANZA expedition, which was the first permanent colonizing expeditions, the first permanent settlement in California. So what some cool things about the ANZA expedition are that it helps you understand California in a global context. So in the 1770s, this bit of territory where we live had been part of New Spain for 200 plus years that Spain had claimed this territory. But Spain and everybody else knew that their claim to the territory was somewhat imaginary because there weren't Spanish people there. And if anybody else walked up and said, we claim it now, nobody from Spain was going to be there to contradict them or to say, hey, get out of here. So Spain knew that from their stronghold in central Mexico, where they had defeated the Aztec Empire in the mid 1500s, that they needed to spread out. So California, we think of it as the western frontier of the United States, but it was the northern frontier of New Spain. Oh. And in the 1770s, the king of Spain was like, we got to get some people up there. England and Russia are eyeing that territory. We can't keep fake claiming it. We have to claim it. And so they built the forts, the presidios. They contracted with the Catholic Church to build and run the missions. That's all a way. I mean, essentially, the mission system was a new alternative to the slavery system that they had used in Mexico. That was a way to get all this labor pulling in one direction for the Spanish Empire. But they knew those things wouldn't be sustained unless they had some kind of civilian population. So they sent out a ground expedition to establish this route and settle somewhere in California, essentially pretty close to where the presidios were planning to be built. So in 1776, you had a presidio in San Diego and one being built in San Francisco. Those were your two options. So you can follow this expedition and they go out and settle the new frontier, and that's pretty interesting in time and space. But a lot of what's cool about the story is who would do that. So, I hear people use the term decolonizing the curriculum. We need to decolonize, but I often think that those people are decolonizing before they fully understand what colonizing was. And so this is a very specific example. If you think about how did the Spanish colonize California, it wasn't a bunch of Spanish people. It was a bunch of Afro Caribbean indigenous people who were taking the opportunity to do the work of the Spanish for improvement in the Spanish colonial system. So you might know that Mexico had a caste system, 30 different castes, which essentially protected Spanish blood and Spanish privilege from the mixing. It gave Spanish men access to indigenous and African women in a way it did not give African and Spanish women access to African and indigenous men. So it's patriarchal and racially hierarchical at the same time. So if you're living in that situation and there's this opportunity to go break ground on the frontier in a place that might be hostile, which certainly isn't going to be comfortable, the people in the upper, half of that caste system are like, yeah, I think I'll stay here and I'll like go to the bar and the coffee shop, and that concert next month sounds pretty interesting, and there's going to be a new theater troupe arriving from Spain on a couple boats from now. So you've got a lot of things to look forward to. But if you're on the lower end of that system, you're like, what? I could go be somebody in this new place. I could be something significant. So the 240 people that went essentially looked like any middle school group in California, is what I think. It was a very mixed heritage group, very young, because the idea was that they would be young people who would have lots and lots of kids and help populate this land. So it's interesting just historically wise. You might know the name Pio Pico, the last Mexican governor of California. He was a direct descendant of Anza expedition, Afro-Latino expedition member. And so there's an interesting story about how when California is part of Mexico, it's this kind of heyday for Afro-Latinos. They are accepted because they've learned Spanish, they've been baptized in the Catholic Church, they've essentially ascended to full Spanishness despite their limitations they would have experienced in more central New Spain. And then when California transitions to American control, all of those people understand the way race is understood in the United States, and they immediately stop identifying as Afro. They're just Latino. So lots and lots of people who are part of what we now understand as the Mexican people who lived in California before it became territory of the United States were in fact a lot less Mexican and a lot less Spanish than we think, but they immediately dropped part of that identification in realizing that it would be disadvantageous to be identified. The Spanish had given them that special deal of go do the work on the frontier and we'll recognize you as Spanish. The Americans weren't offering them that deal, so don't let them identify you as Black. So anyway, okay, this is my divergence. See, I always find a way to fill up some time. But this is all just a long-winded answer to yes, Michelle, keep asking for things. If something looks interesting and you go, yes, help me understand where to get that from, because I do think iNaturalist is a great place to go do some quick and easy explorations in things that'll be interesting. Because you could pull up if kids hear that a bobcat was sighted, somewhere near the school, and you go, well, how unusual is that? You can pull up iNaturalist and search for bobcat sightings in California or bobcat sightings in your county and get an immediate visual and say, oh, well, actually, now that we're aware and interested to ask how often do people see bobcats, here's the answer. It's maybe more frequently than you thought, or maybe not, but at least you have the answer. So yes, we will be doing that kind of thing. And I let me check back in the chat. Okay. then I also wanted to, so time goes by so quickly, and then I go, did we even talk about this last time? About the computer science standards? Did we? Okay. So I just, I don't always answer well to the powers that be, like they're like, geez, the thing we asked you to do was this. And I'm like, oh, but I was having such a good time doing that. I never remembered that that's what you were asking me to do. So this is just my note to self that like, hey, what the funding that came from the state legislature was about integration of computer science instruction into other subjects. So I wanted to make sure, to share that with you guys and just to remind you that there's, and so apparently we did talk about this. Thank you for the reminder. But that, we can look at the computer science standards and find that, well, this is maybe, and I think now I do remember talking about it because I was like, there's only one of us who's probably looked at this in any at all before. So I was expecting it to seem quite foreign and unfamiliar, but the truth is a lot of the language was things that I think we can all align pretty quickly with our own teaching practice. So things like equity in access and equity in capacity to pursue the interests and the questions that a student has. These are things that we're all interested in. So hopefully, has anybody had a chance to do so? The ask was just to make sure to go back to your individual plan and just think about which of these core practices or which of the standards in specific might be relevant to what you're proposing or what you're working on with your students. Is there anybody who had a positive experience with that and found anything that they could work with?
I just did a survey 1, 2, 3, and my kids created surveys, and then these are sixth graders, and then they were able to take that data from a CVS and make a dashboard with pie charts, and then we had maps of the locations of where the people answered, and I was pretty excited about the conversations they had around data, and I think it really definitely fit into that design a project that combines hardware and software components, collect and exchange data. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. And so what was the survey about?
They got to choose. So I just wanted them to really be able to take data, look at it, analyze it, decide how to share it, and then tell a story about it.
Very
So they had to pick 2 survey questions they created that went together. So some of them did like, what sports do you like? Do you play the sport? How often do you play the sport? Things that were very simple, but just
Yeah.
got them engaged in the process of what does it look like to make a statistical question, and then how do we analyze the data once it came in. And they were very excited. And then of course the map with the geotags that showed all the places their survey made it to around the United States was pretty cool.
Very cool, very cool. So and I'm thinking right now I'm channeling Michelle's comment from before, going, that's the kind of thing that we can share with other folks how to do that. The survey 123, which is connected to ArcGIS online. So a great easy tool for making surveys. And I can already just imagine the students, because when you create a survey and administer the survey, that data belongs to you, and like nobody else has ever had that data in the history of the world. And as mundane or simple as the questions might have been, I can see the kids would be kind of excited that they did something, that they kind of dug into people's understandings and collected some information that they can now talk about and share with other people. So that's very cool.
Yeah, it was.
And also an excellent example of how a pretty, that probably wasn't a real long activity in terms of the amount of classroom time or the amount of student work time that was involved, but that pretty squarely hits the standard concept. So very cool. Anybody else have something related to the computer science standards that maybe just from reading them for the first time, or? This this level of the core concepts and sub concepts might be as deep as you really need to go. The language in the standard sometimes is a little more, it's too, if it's too precise, it makes you wonder whether it includes what you're doing. But I certainly see there's a lot of opportunity for us to overlap and infuse these things into the topics that we're teaching.
I use this, I've looked at this as well, the data and analysis part, the collection, visualization, and transformation, and just want to create some assignments where I'm telling them what they're looking for. And so they get used to some of these different websites and maps and how to navigate them, and then them kind of find their own information, and then ultimately collect data, like what she was saying, and use that on a map as well. So that's where I'm leaning towards on a couple of these assignments, but hopefully to be able to make several or one big unit of project to go with this. I was looking at those.
Very cool. Yeah, I think also I had shared, and so I'm making a mental note of when we're in San Diego to double back into the Gapminder website that I had shared, because that does some really the word transformation caught my eye in this table. After collection and visualization, and that website does some cool stuff with transforming data presentations, so that you can see the different types of graphs with the same data sets, and how you might see a relationship in one type of presentation that you missed in another. All right, so okay, so that's just a reminder then, for if you haven't looked into these things, don't be too intimidated. It's a lot of English language words that we're very familiar with, and you'll go, wait, these concepts aren't so computerized. There's actually very few of these concepts that to me felt unique to the use of computers or computer science. Okay, what else I got in here? Apparently nothing. So so what do you know? Okay, so this is we've talked about the fact that we're going to meet in May, and then we're not going to meet in June, because we're going to be, finishing up our school years, and there's going to be plenty going on. So we will meet May 21st. And what we'll do is I will make a point of giving some feedback on everybody's plan by May, let's say 7th, so 2 weeks before that meeting. So that way you'll have had some time, if you have questions about my feedback, or you want to think about it, that gives you a little time before we meet. And then I think what I will propose for our May meeting is for us to spend most of the time in groups of 3 or 4, probably 4, and then just people sharing what's in your plan, going through the components, taking 5 minutes each to just kind of spit it out, share what you're doing, do that kind of cross-pollination. That way everybody's ideas can continue to evolve, because I think that's one thing I haven't done enough of, is give you guys opportunities to share where you're thinking about taking your ideas with your students, and that will undoubtedly cause some connections and some new ideas for people that maybe are looking for new ideas. So I guess I was right that I didn't have enough to make up a full session. Any questions or anything that before? Yes, Renee.
I just want to say, I didn't realize that date. I'm going to be in the Mojave Desert for that week because my husband's attached to Sac City. And so he gets to go as a professor, and me and the kids get to go along. And we go to the Desert Studies Center and all this cool stuff. It was like a cult leader had started it, and now the state acquired it because he didn't pay his taxes. And it's now part of the CSUS system.
This sounds
But
like a
I
very
so I have to
interesting story we need to know more about.
Oh my gosh, it's so fascinating. And it's just, it's an amazing trip. And we get to hold bats and bugs, and it's so much fun. And we go out at night and we set pit traps to see what creatures go into them. And
Very
it's
cool.
exquisite. And it's with all these college kids. And we just get to tag along, and my girls get an exposure. But I have to see if we're at the Desert Study Center that night, I'll be able to connect.
Okay,
If
well, if
not,
not,
I
I think
probably be out in a tent.
you do get a little bit of a free pass if that's your, I mean, even if that's a made up story. As a years of being a college professor, I tell students that's an amazing story you've made up.
We
I
get
mean,
to go
and
climb
even
up
if
the
it's
Kelso
true,
Dunes
it's not
too.
relevant to me, but it's a really cool story. But your story is very cool for why you're not going to be there.
You should come join us.
I see. I would like to, but I have a commitment.
that you're going to respect and honor.
Yeah, when I as much as I can. Well, thank you for letting me know that, Renee. That sounds
Yes, I'll let you know
fascinating
when I see
and
the agenda.
fantastic. I would like to be there. The cave. So I don't know if you guys get
Next
to go
year.
in the cave, and I'm trying to think of what the name of the cave is that's inside the Mojave National Park. I
No,
forget what it is,
everybody.
but there's a cave that is a great example of a sky island isolated. There's two species of insects that live only in that cave,
That'd be my idea.
but also
Okay.
where they recently discovered a giant sloth, a mummified giant sloth from
Dan,
only
it's
about
just an
1,000
insect
years
that live
ago.
in a cave, and they've discovered a giant sloth there in the Mojave. Do you know of it?
No.
You know of it? No. Okay, he's gonna look it up then.
Okay, because
Yeah.
so it was
Because
it
he's my
was
entomologist. Yeah.
it was a good kind of confirmation. Scientists think that
Okay.
the one of the challenges with the Joshua tree, so
Mhm.
Joshua trees are endangered and they're not reproducing, and so there's
Right.
some issues with climate change. And then oh, so somebody just whispered Mitchell Caverns to me. Mitchell Caverns
Yay.
is
Mitchell
the name
Caverns?
of the cave.
Yeah. You know?
And so they had this theory that maybe the giant sloths were the spreaders of the seeds of the Joshua tree, and that the Joshua tree is just tall enough that these giant ground sloths could reach and were eating the fruit, and that they had seen that the seeds of the plant only germinate if they get tossed down a desert wash, like they get washed a mile or two in a flash flood, and then the coating of the seed gets roughed up enough where it will germinate. And so some smart scientists said, maybe that was happening in the GI tract of a giant sloth before. So anyway, long story short, they find this giant sloth that's only like 800 to 1,000 years old, and they said it looked like it was like a stuffed animal. It was so well preserved, and it had a belly full of the seeds and fruits of the Joshua tree. So they were like, "Ha, we were correct." So now they're even more concerned about the future of the Joshua tree because there's no giant sloths around to eat it and poop it out. So I don't know how that's geocomputational, but I'm sure it could be.
Oh, we can track their path somewhere, huh? Right? Or
Yeah, but I thought that was fascinating to find
So
that
the
out.
Neils have to find the last living one. We got it.
Yeah, or maybe this goes high on the list of things that they should bring back with genetic cloning.
There you go. Those Joshua trees. Yeah, we
They're
need
like,
them.
we need this for the Joshua trees. Joshua trees are dependent on it.
Yeah.
Almost every fruiting plant is dependent on one other species. I learned, for example, this is not just me extending our time together, but I learned that every single fig tree has a very specific wasp that pollinates it. And if for every fig tree wasp combination, if one or the other should go extinct, they're certain that the other would go extinct with it. That wasp and the fig trees have evolved to be completely dependent on each other. So
Yeah, we've done a ton with the gulls and stuff. Yeah. That's
yeah.
so cool.
So, so I have a
What is the
question that
oak tree?
relates
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah.
So in that moment, like if we had that question come up in our class, where would we be able to access like the range of a certain wasp and the range of a certain fruiting body or fruiting tree? Like, is there like some sort of database that we could access that information to be able to overlay them and say, yes, look, this is their range?
So what I've done is I use iNaturalist information. So you can find a specific species and then go in there. There's information. It's often quite limited though, which is a good lesson for students of guess what? Most things we don't know most things about. Not there's some things we don't know about. No, most things we don't know most of the things about it. And so that I find this in iNaturalist when I find a species, and I'm not like in the deepest, darkest jungles of Peru or anything, you know, I'm in a driveway in Honolulu, and I can't get information about this particular, you know, bug or bird that I've seen because there just isn't enough scientists out there documenting it. So looking at like for example, just those are general, and let me find a wasp that I've seen. Why won't it come up? So when you get a specific species, then you can get a description and a habitat and a development and all of this information for some things. And you look and there's quite a bit in here, and then you'll find another species and it'll just say, you know, discovered this year. That's it. That's all we know. So that's a place you can go. iNaturalist. Also Web of Life is another one. The challenge though, I think a lot of cases is finding the specific thing. And I was just explaining to somebody why I like iNaturalist so much. I used to walk around with a guidebook. And if I saw something that I got a good enough look at, I could sit there, stop on the trail, pull out a guidebook and try to find the thing. I almost never succeeded in finding it and spent so much time leafing through the book, looking at pictures that gradually I'd forget what the thing looked like that I'd seen. If I hadn't got, you know, now I've seen 1,000 pictures of not it. And I'm like, wait a minute, did the thing I see have these yellow stripes or were they the other way, you know? And so that being able to kind of compile it and then get that information in a timely fashion is so useful, so that you actually kind of advance your understanding. So I will also take that, Michelle, as a suggestion to see if like for seeking information. But like I love just the fact that you can go on iNaturalist, type in the whoops, if you go to the map, and you can just zoom in on your school site and see what have people been seeing. So, you know, I'm out here in Hawaii. I can draw a box around where I'm at. Oops, draw a box, Tom. And then, why did I draw the box there? And then I'll just get all kinds of, what do people see here? So just doing that for your school or your home community and seeing, do we know all these things? Does this all look familiar to us? Have we been missing some of the nature that's in our backyard? You know, obviously Hawaii can be maybe more interesting in some ways than other places, but I'll tell you, California has it on Hawaii for biodiversity. I mean, we've got a lot. They do not have a lot of mammals here. We've got a lot of mammals. We have a lot of biodiversity to look at. This is my picture from earlier.
So I have a question then.
Yes.
Is this where you could find a lot of answers? Like, I feel like I'm looking for these kinds of things all the time, just because I'll see a new bug in my backyard and I have a big backyard, or a new mushroom will pop up and I don't know what it is. But I'm just Googling, like, why is there so many of this specific insect in my yard this year? just, I'm sure that there's some kind of species in the food chain that's been eradicated by God knows what, but really we know what, I guess. But I am always looking for information, like, what is this? Why is this here? Why is there so many of these here? And these kinds of websites would answer those
So
questions.
yes, so iNaturalist is a great place to put that up there, because also, so there's the possibility that you don't know what it is and somebody
Mhm.
can help you learn. And this is a little bit like social media, where other people see what you posted and can comment on it. So
Mhm.
I oftentimes post a picture of something like, I didn't know for sure this was a common wax bill. I say, I think it is, and then somebody says, yes, it is. And then you kind of move on with knowledge that that's what it is. But the
Mhm.
other thing is, maybe that common wax bill is scientifically significant, or it's dangerous.
Mhm.
And so by documenting this as part of the um, International Biodiversity Database, so that people can know this thing is there and scientists can go back. So observations I make just to learn more about my environment might turn out to be useful in some scientific study or in some attempt to eradicate a dangerous invasive species that's causing a big problem. So not only is this a good way to build your knowledge, but then it's a good way to share that knowledge with other people. And maybe it doesn't answer the why question all the time, but it will help you see whether other people are noticing that. And then every now and then I get a message from somebody that says, "Did you really see that?" Yes, I did really see that. Wow, that's unusual because this, and then so they tell you something about it, and they just want to kind of fact check what you're
Yeah.
saying you reported seeing. So these things, these things can become significant beyond the extent to which we know they're significant when other people get that info.
Cool.
This
Okay.
gets me excited about spending time together in July.
Same.
So two things that we'll do, and that I know for sure is we're gonna go spend a lot of time in the classroom talking about ideas and sharing resources and just free flowing ideas. The other thing I know we're going to do that I'm going to make you all do with me is an urban geography exploration. So that's my thing, is interpreting neighborhoods. And so at least one time we'll do something that's not computer oriented at all, but it is geocomputational, and we'll be going through interesting neighborhood landscapes and kind of decoding and understanding how this got to be this way. So if you're familiar with San Diego neighborhoods or not, I bet you'll find something new and interesting by taking a geographic lens. So that's something we're going to do when we're all in San Diego, and I have the opportunity to share that with you. All right. Otherwise, if there's other questions, I am still here, free to hang out, but otherwise I will look forward to seeing you guys in May, and you can look forward to getting some feedback. Laura's going to eat her dinner. People have other things. No, don't be sorry. Dinner is important. Nutrition is pretty much secondary only to air. So do not ever be sorry about eating during our sessions. Also, we'll get to eat together in San Diego. We'll share a meal. But otherwise, I'll see you guys in May.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Tom, my just quick question was if that itinerary's changed, is me going back early a problem or does that work okay?
I think, how early were you going back?
It was sending me back like at 3 versus 7.
Oh, yeah, no, not a problem. We're
Okay.
only meeting till, let me figure it out there. Till like half day that day, right? You're on the 17th?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, perfect. It just was weird. So it had the same looking logo, but it had different initials on the logo.
Yeah, and you're right to be caught. When somebody emails me something, I'm like,
Yeah.
they know something, but they don't seem to know everything they should know.
Right. And again, the logos, the letters didn't match. It looked identical, but the letters were totally wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't actually explain that, but I do know I get those same emails from them.
Okay, so I'm safe replying to that.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
I was just going to wait
Yep.
till I talk to you to even click on it. I'm like, I'll click on it then and accept it. I mean, getting home earlier is never a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly. not a
And
problem.
Dan gets to hang out with the two girls all on his own for all those days, so he'll be ready for me. He'll appreciate me.
Make it later.
Exactly. Shay, I think it's the whole week and it'll show up on our credit card oddly after a certain day. I don't
Yeah.
understand. Only I didn't miss the bugger, it'd be easier.
Yeah, that's the
All right,
problem.
thank you, and thank you for
Sure.
tonight.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank
This
you.
was cool. I'm really excited to do this stuff. When you see my lesson plan, Tom, I'm playing with stuff with the kids with their state projects. So
Excellent.
it'll be
Excited.
fun. I'm excited. So thank you for the opportunity.
You're very welcome.
Have a good night, Tom. Bye, Laura.
Bye. Okay, so I have a question.
Sure.
I am working on a curriculum project, like through another kind of project fellowship slash thing, and a lot of the curriculum that we created there is using, geography, looking at it's a biodiversity curriculum for LA County.
Oh, awesome.
And so using like, the different mapping programs and looking at, invasive species, redlining, how like the virus screen data and redlining maps line up. Like, so that's kind of already, like, that's already mostly done. So I shouldn't include that, right? Like, because this is something new that we're working on.
That so not necessarily, don't feel like you need to exclude that. I mean, I know that some people might say that's double dipping, but that's just a coincidence of, it's kind of good luck. I would say I would leave it entirely up to you, because what I think is that's what you just described from just the few keywords you shared. I'm like, well, that sounds something would be fantastic for this project. So I wouldn't want to ignore it just because you initiated it for something else. So I would take this as an opportunity to just invest in that project. I'm totally fine with that, and this gives you more time to develop ideas for how you'll engage your students in that, and just makes more value out of the thing that you're already doing. So that sounds great to me. Don't worry about that being, the fact that they're overlapping is a positive.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So I have other ideas too, but like we're piloting the curriculum right now. And so the kids have just loved, like, it's been really, really interesting looking at them as they're going through and realizing, like that you can actually see these historical decisions being played out today. And you can look
Right.
at overlapping power plant locations with redlining, and I don't know, it's just been really fun. So
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I mean, that sounds like I would be, if you had come up with that as a result of this fellowship, I'd be amazed and impressed, and very happy about that. So I will have the exact same feeling about it right now.
So yeah, I want to learn how to do the story mapping because I would love to tell that story through the story map. So that's definitely something I want to work on. But
Cool. It's definitely easier than you might think it would be. So um I can help you get started on that. If you wanted to, we could even connect on Zoom for, an hour sometime, and I could just walk you through how to start. Do you have a school account?
I do. I need to go find it, but I
Okay.
started it the first day, the first
Yeah.
session.
Yeah. So if you know how to log in to that, because that way you could be logged into your account as opposed to just watching along and working in the CGA account. And I would be happy to do that, because I find it to be a very enjoyable medium because it is simple to execute. Then I have to remind myself to go back and think about how to make the designs more interesting. But it's not something that I spent much time learning, and I've been able to put some story maps together that I thought, certainly made it easy for students or other audiences to access information just through, one web address. So I would
Thank you.
encourage that.
Yeah, I
There,
would love
that could be the addition from this project to that project.
that project. Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. I'll be in touch when I'm ready for that. I need to do a little more investigating, and then of course, there's teaching and all that.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm on your time schedule, so just let me know when I can be helpful.
okay, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.